Welcome to the new episode of Startups, right? Another day, but this time with my good friend Ash. I met Ash during my master's at Imperial, and we're doing our business innovation entrepreneurship masters. And since graduating, we've been catching up quite a bit, right, Ash? Talking about everything to do with startups and being a founder and VC. And one day when we're sitting down, we're like, let's just make an episode around it. Might as well televise our conversation. So super excited and happy to have you on the pod, Ash.
Happy to be here, Javed. It's a long time coming, and really look forward to answering your questions, hopefully in the right way, if there is a right way.
I'm sure. I will say I'm very excited because I know it's gonna be just like our typical conversations. And you're right, it's been in the works for a while now. I'm glad we finally both found time to make it happen. I guess I'm just gonna really jump in with one of the key themes that we always kind of talked about, which was, you always mentioned that you weren't meant for the corporate life. You knew from the very early on, you were like, I'm gonna become a founder. Um, so I've I've heard your answers before, but I wanna really kind of get your perspective and share it with others who might be in a similar position. At what point did you realize that being a founder was the only path for you, and what was the kind of the catalyst for that?
Well, being a founder, really like that whole idea started when I was quite young. It actually started when I uh, built my first website at the age of 14. It's not like I just manifested into my head that, hey, I hate corporate. I didn't even probably know what corporate was back then. But what I really wanted to do was build stuff. And I started to just build for the sake of building. And I feel I still do that today. But as the years went on, what really stood out was the freedom to do things that you want to do is only like there when you're building something by yourself. And of course, into my 20s, I realized that it's actually much harder than the corporate life, even though we have people saying that I hate corporate. But being a founder is equally, if not like a lot harder. You don't have timings, you have no responsibilities. You, in fact, set them yourself. So it's an incredible show of like restraint and patience. And even after all that, even after knowing all of this, the reason why I want to be a founder is truly the freedom to build what I want to build and to honestly just make people's lives easier. Like building with that in mind is the sole goal of why I do what I do.
And I forgot to mention your startup, which is Swipe on Tech, and it is meant for the viewers out there. It's meant to make your lives easier, and we're gonna get into what Swipe on Deck is and what he's building. But you're right about the job part. Being a founder, I feel like calling it a job is, would be misleading. Saying it's a very hard, it's a very personal journey. It's deeply personal. It's very uncertain. And as you said, they're not really external kind of deadlines and timelines and pressures, which makes it even harder, to be to if you want to get to somewhere. Essentially, what I'm trying to say. Um, and one of the major drawbacks is that kind of, I guess, one of the major issues is staying motivated long enough in a sustainable way to avoid burnout. And because it's not a 1 year journey, it's not a 2 year journey. It's usually at least a 10-year journey, right? Depending on, obviously, there are always edge cases and whatnot. So how do you manage to do that, Ash? You've been building for a while now, and your startup, saying SwipeOnDeck, has been at least a year now in the making. um, how do you manage to stay motivated and prevent the burnout?
Well, in fact, this really translates to every single project that I've done, every single company I try to start. Um, I would say it's you are gonna burn out. Like there is no real way out of it. In fact, and I don't know if it's a super pessimistic way in my head, but I know that I will. Like if I work hard enough, that's the end goal. But the way you kind of mitigate it is to know the symptoms of it, and like to know what's going to happen when you get there. Because a lot of people would say, oh, try this, like listen to zen music, or like maybe go and play golf or go-karting or whatever. But in reality, when it comes to it, we live in a world, and where of course you have AI and stuff like making people like superhuman. But this was a problem that was there even before AI, because you're trying to people are trying to capture market share from the established players as a startup, because as you're building a new thing, you're trying to build it better than someone else. So that someone else could be someone with a team that have like hundreds of people, maybe thousands. But that's how every great like startup begins, right? So I would say my personal ways to like get rid of burnout is to lean right into it. Like I would say, um, in fact, I think like a week ago, I was just done with a 2 week sprint, like easily over 100 hours in the week. How I log it is I check my screen time, I check like how much time I'm on via like just some regular Pomodoro techniques, just like every time I finish a bug, I reset the timer, start again, see how efficient I can be. But at the end, you reach a stage where you just don't have anything left in the tank. You wanna like just brain rot just with some Instagram reels, watch a couple movies, and then you just don't want to do anything. But I see it as a necessary indication from your body to like say, hey, take some rest. So I extend it. I don't just jump back into work. I take a week if I have to. So take the time that you need and really use that to just plan. I think the thing that people miss is that if you can do work fast, but the planning aspect happens like days, if not even weeks or months in advance, because it's manifesting in your head in a way. So plan first and then execute, because the execution just got a lot easier and your life's going to be so much easier if you just plan well.
I'm gonna ask you to elaborate a bit, but what I'm hearing is essentially what you say. Sort of embrace the burnout, accept that it's gonna happen. Don't try to run away from it. And I saw it somewhere. It's gonna be a very cliche example, but somebody was talking about how operate like a. I don't want to sound like one of those, guru speakers, but I think one of the people were saying about how operate like a lion. Essentially, when you're hunting, you put all the energy into sprint, into finding and then lions also chill most like after the hunt, right? So essentially embrace the burnout, but then when it arrives, also manage to take some time off to recharge and get back into it. When you say, just very quickly to get your opinion about planning, you said plan. What do you mean by that?
Well, planning is nothing more than just arranging your thoughts in a sequential way. Like that's the nerdiest way to think about it. I like to go old school. There's some great ways to do it right now. You can like have a like some a note taker app, like get from some videos. But I actually never travel. I just have a notebook. It's just notebook and a pen. And I like to write and I like to observe. So when you're planning for something new, you're trying to build it for a certain use case. Like there's no, you're not building just because oh I just need it. Like you're never gonna build like maybe an order delivery system for an experience finding app like what we're doing if it's not required. If the users are asking for it, if there's an actual need for it, of course you're gonna build it. But getting that data, observing people, getting feedback, and then of course architecting the entire system, that how does it integrate with the rest of the features. There's a lot of things to think about, and I feel that's what planning really is. It's just arranging your thoughts in a way so that you can get the people who you work with to align with what you have in your head, and it reduces time, the time it takes to actually get it out. Like I feel that unplanned implementations of applications or services or even anything, like it goes even into your personal life. If you don't plan your life properly, you're going to end up in a random situation. Maybe it's beneficial, maybe it's don't. But I'm a guy who likes to control the variables of my life. And if even as a simple thing as maybe adding a button, which could probably reduce like uh reduce like kind of the complexity of the app if it's just like to save better, if like the save was in a different place, I would spend a week on that. I would research anything there is, and the actual implementation would be like 5-10 minutes. So, but it, what should be like seen properly is that we can't discount that 1 week it took to actually get that into my head and then put it there. Some people do it faster, some people do it slower. I'm one of the slower ones. But when people say I build fast, it's not really the case. So you got to account for that time of planning, and that's where it comes from.
Very interesting. Actually, that ties very well into my next question, which is in the early days of building, you know, what does what matters more? Is it the moving fast? Is it being right? Or just, surviving long enough to learn and, move to the next stage?
So, well, in the early days, and I believe you're asking for like any start, or is it just particularly to my?
Really, any startup.
All right. So in the early days, I would say you got to find a problem you want to solve for people. In fact, the first person you got to solve it for is yourself. If you're like, to be very honest, in the beginning of tech, I didn't want to use my own app. It was slow, it was sluggish, and I found myself using Google Maps. Now, since that was like the immediate competitor, it's not a direct competitor, but it is something I would use. So that was an observation I did, and I'm like, the day I stop using this app and use my own app is the day this app is actually ready. So you got to first solve that problem. That's number one. So number two is that you got to like make you got to get a lot of feedback, and you should not think about revenue in the beginning, especially for like I would say B2C app like us, because it comes with scale, and it doesn't come with just like it's not going to manifest. The volumes required are crazy. It's like you need at least 10,000 users to even like think about this. So like I would say don't think about revenue, just keep building features, keep shipping and launch early. Do the YC way and just launch. If it doesn't work, just like pull it back, relaunch again. I've done it 105 times. We have launched 105 builds and we still haven't got to where we want to be. And finally, that early traction where we learned in class as well, that's super important. Because if we don't have early traction, uh, either pivot or like just ditch the idea, because it's a hard thing to let go. Especially, it'd be super hard for me to let go. But if there was any indication that this market is a no go, I would drop it. Like 13 months of work, it's fine. Like drop it.
You kind of touched upon a few things that I want to ask down the line, and maybe you can elaborate. But one thing I really want to kind of get your perspective on. One, you said, you mentioned that AI has made us a bit superhuman. We move fast. You can do more work while having fewer people. Um, but that also has put this immense pressure to bring more results. To get to the certain point much faster than the typical timeline. Um, and you, as somebody who also likes to plan and execute and kind of divides those two things, right? How much time, obviously you have to move fast, you have to launch, you have to get through that. Also, you have to plan. You can just do things without having any thought behind it. So what's the right balance? Like, how do you think of the balance between those two things?
So, just to follow up, are you asking like how do I balance between planning and execution?
What I'm trying to ask is, you know, obviously they say move fast, break things, right? But there's also got to be a certain level of strategy and thinking behind moving fast and breaking things. You can just go out and do it. What's the right balance in your opinion?
I mean, it's one word: redundancies. Like plenty and plenty redundancies. You gotta uh, at least my ethos is that there are some tenets of the like how you build that you cannot like forego. For example, the one thing is my app cannot crash. Like that's number one. So if an app crashes in production, that is the worst feeling for a developer. That means you have failed. It's a gut wrenching feeling if a user comes and say, "Hey, like my app just froze." So you haven't just like broken the trust of the app. You have literally frozen them from doing anything on their system. Then they have to reset. That reset is a huge mental block, and like they will never come back because they're associated with. So I would say adding redundancies over redundancies, even if the app doesn't work as well when the original method fails. Let's say like you're doing a few calls to an agent to solve something in your app, and maybe like in our case, we do use some AI for the chatbot. We actually found out that it was running on a redundancy. It actually never actually fully worked, and we never noticed it. We noticed some quality drop off, which is why we investigated. But that was great for me to hear because I can be certain that the app will never fail. So the way we plan it is that the plan has to first solve for the problem that you're working on, but also you should make sure that you're not breaking the trust of the user. It's as simple. A button, if it lags more than 2 seconds, you're going to think it's broken. In a world with like attention spans which is dwindling, you got to think about, yes, you got to think about it, but you got to think about a bunch of other things that n- it wouldn't necessarily come in the main planning stage. I mean, I'm never going to be thinking like the button that I actually I'm going to make is going to fail. So that comes from a very contrarian outlook where you have to expect that things will go bad, and then you just go like you just like deal with it. This happens in the implementation phase. So the balance here is that you got to mix in that implementation and planning here and there. So while you're planning, let's say that you hit a roadblock, you just build it. Just see if that idea in your head works. If it doesn't, chuck it, and then you have another path. And then during the implementation, even with an amazing 7 day planned out um, feature run, you also have to be ready to let go, saying, "Oh, damn, I can't actually do this." I know I'm giving a button as an example. It was obviously for more advanced things, but the point is the same. Like you gotta intersperse everything with everything.
No, I think that puts your like point beautifully. What you're trying to say, and I guess in a way, also what I'm understanding is there's certain main things you have to keep in mind, no matter what stage you're at. It might not be perfect. You might not have all the things working, but there's certain things that if they go wrong, it's gonna ruin the user experience, and they're not gonna come back. Some tiny details here and there might be fine, but the main core thing, like the app crashing, you always have to keep that in mind. Fair enough. Um, Another thing I really want to quickly ask, because you said, doesn't matter if I spend certain months, if it's not going anywhere, like, it's fine. How long is long enough to know whether I should drop it or whether I should just stick with it?
So I would say there's stages to it. You never know like when it hits you personally, and obviously when the market tells you. So uh, let's say, for example, you were doing a startup that deals with like Excel for AI, right? So this is something I've tried with actually a classmate of ours, and it was a genius idea. Like I think it was something that the market needed. There was real interest for it, but at the time, if we're like implementing it then with probably the right marketing strategy, would have gotten us to where we needed to. But if I were to do the same idea now, you have Claude for Excel. Uh, Probably you could say I have better features. You have better, like, is saying that it's a standalone app. You could argue with that. But the vast majority of people are not gonna switch. That switching cost is way too high. So I would say it starts from the beginning, like what's the state of the market right at that point when you actually think about the idea, like actually starting to uh, plan out the features, plan out the app or the service. So you got to be ready to ditch it at any time. Like that, the sunk cost of that should never be on your mind, and it's something I struggle to because it's like your baby. Like it's harder as it goes further in. So I would say if I were to give a concrete answer on when you have to actually leave, as early as possible. If you don't believe in it 100%, leave. Like just end it, and you won't like feel as bad. But also be prepared to do it when you're almost at the finish line.
Well,
And that's the hardest thing to do.
that's really actually you keep saying stuff that makes me create new questions in my head. So um, I'm going to ask another question very quickly. Um, you said, yeah, Cloud Update kind of erased this Excel startup, right? Like, uh, and we see that quite often. OpenAI update, Cloud Update, erases new startups out of existence. How do you manage to build an edge right now? How do you manage to stay defensible, stay I mean, those big, companies have the resources, the brain power, the capital to go about really anything. And they also have the brand name, as you said, nobody's going to switch from cloud to something small just getting out unless there's an incredible values being provided that is nowhere else. So how do you manage to build that edge?
Well, the short answer is no. Like if one of these big companies wanted to build what you want, they are gonna build it in like the a span of time which is much shorter than yours. So I would like to like make an analogy to probably like a Star Wars theme right here. So like think about like the big companies like Dreadnoughts, and you're like a little let's say a little TIE fighter, a little X-Wing. You want to fly under their radar. You want to fly under the radar and amass as much power before they notice you. Before their incentive is to not actually beat you by making something comparable. Probably the idea is to maybe acquire you, or like you have a nice exit out of that. So today, if you're building with AI, as a developer, I would say every idea is just getting built every second. Like the better these models get, there is no idea in the world that is safe, because now the idea to execution, that time frame has gone from like I think just a year ago it was a day or two. Now it's like 10 minutes, 20 minutes, and you're getting like something that is uh, good enough for an MVP because it kind of like puts it on like a screen that this is what I want. But conversely, I would say that is one of the most objective things that you could build an edge from, which is the design of it. If you notice, all AI stuff just is the same thing. They are designed the same, unless you have like a front end design skill that you've added, like you've added some custom styling. If you really thought about this, most apps are going to look the same. And I think I'm not the only one. Like you can kind of tell if it's an AI app,
Yeah.
just like how you can tell an image if it's AI generated. It's like the little tells. I want to like point it out. It's those translucent colors that give it away.
Yeah.
But that's the point. Like it's like everyone hired the same engineer, and it's no different for anyone unless you specifically tell that engineer to do something different. So the way to get an edge here is to do exactly that. Tell that engineer to do something different. So the design of it is a big thing from an emotional point of view that really indicates to a user that you've put in more work than just randomly prompting. Because just like how AI slop is taking over, when you see a lot of subpar content, or even at the time, if it's state of the art, it's like it's like that from the movie Incredibles. If from what Syndrome said, if everyone is super, no one is. So in this case, when everyone's given the same god tier AI and they're building the same thing, they need to go like that two steps further. Then it becomes a race on how much did you fine tune those prompts? Like how much did you get further? So the more that's where the race comes. And then it starts to not be as easy as the 10 minutes. It actually then goes into like hours, then days, then weeks, and then they refine it with user feedback. And the person who's getting on top of this is the one with the most data, the one with the most traction. So I would say there's plenty of things you could be defensible about, but I would say, at least to the big guys, stay on the radar, like go really, really quick and establish some form of visual and like actual functional distinction, no matter how small it might be. It could literally be an interface change of the existing player. It could be like stuff that people who are users currently don't like about the main app, that they'll take some time to implement it into their version versus yours. So you have to be faster than them. Even if it's like a day faster, it makes a huge difference today. And that could be the difference of you exiting or not. So that's everything.
One key theme I've been hearing in my conversations is the taste. And I think you kind of touched upon it by the idea of design, having the taste that would distinguishes you from others. Um, but from what you said, the feeling I got is that what you're saying, the typical exit pathway is now more and more so becoming acquisition instead of just going public. Is that the feeling you have, or?
Well, I think to actually IPO today, the amount of resources that are needed are like a lot more than it was before. Especially more competition means it's harder to get to the top. Like it's everyone's swallowing up each other because it takes a lot of guts and a lot of like having like diamond hands, I guess, to actually go to IPO. But more importantly, I think the ones that do go to IPO have amassed like huge customer bases. That's one. They have great traction, and also they have a sustainable business model. I think most of the apps, including ours, uh, just like being super transparent, is like we don't have a solid business model yet. So until we solve that, there is no like revenue coming in at any point. Like leave profit. Like you don't even have cash inflow. So you're solving a problem, but you're not like we haven't like found a way to make money of that sustainably. You can make a few, like a 50 or 100, but when you're sustaining over long term an actual company, the expenses eat it up. So I would say that if there's no plan for that, then the only option is to get acquired, like to make yourself very suitable uh, to a competitor who's like a bit bigger, who has the capital to actually acquire, who would best like who would actually improve themselves by acquiring you, like maybe your team, maybe your IP. You could make both of them desirable or maybe one desirable. So that's the only way I see it. Maybe there's different outlooks saying that, of course, like companies can IPO, but look at the numbers, look at the percentages. I would love to know a percentage of how many YC startups have actually been successful, because I see one on LinkedIn every day, every day, and I really wanted to find the number, which I couldn't. Maybe I didn't look hard enough on how many of them were actually successful. I bet most of them are bankrupt, because it's just that it's so fast, this whole pace of building and then shipping and then getting the customers, that the person who endures the most is the one who's actually held on for the longest. So pivoting and then like finding that PMF, it could throw a bunch of words in, but then like the end of it, it's pretty bleak. No.
Yeah. Um, no, first of all, I really appreciate how candid and honest you are, even talking about your own company, and I think it's very refreshing in many ways. Um, but you're right. I mean, I think today I saw the acquisition of Wiz by Google has been completed, and it's like for 30 billion, which is way higher than a typical IPO. What a typical IPO would be like. But and yeah, I've been seeing more and more acquisitions, and the AI has really changed the landscape and the dynamic. But you are also right that everybody and their mother is starting a startup these days, so it's really hard to. I think, as you said, the winners are the ones that manage to grow in this competition and stay in the business long enough. But I guess we've progressed quite a bit, but I'm gonna now kind of pull us back to the inception stage of a startup. When we're at Imperial, There are many ways people are coming out of startups. Some in class, in an entrepreneurship module or a whiteboard. You met a friend, he has an idea, you join them. Very often you meet your co-founder before you have an idea, or somebody in their research, in their personal life, whatever. There are a million ways to come up with an idea for a startup. But and you kind of touched upon it. But if you could elaborate of what's the right way to uh, approach finding an idea or starting into a startup, what signals actually matter and what signals don't.
Well, the signal could be anything. Like you could be like riding the tube, you could be walking across the street, and you gotta be a creep on like observing just everything about what people are doing because in the end, all products, okay, maybe most products are built for humans. So whether it be someone in tech, finance, just a regular person off the street, um, you gotta like find your audience and like who am I really building for? Like even before that, you just gotta find the problem. Like this could come in conversation with like a random person. This could come from an article that you've read. It could come from news. It could literally come from a phone call with your dad. So there is a multitude of ways an idea can form, and you got to keep writing that down, like somewhere, like just so that one day when you feel like it'll be like, I would love to see what my ideas are, and then you have a lot of it. Personally, what I like to do is I like to observe people on the tube. So I was, I, I, I'm usually just listening to music, and not in any creepy way. I don't know if there's a less creepy way of like observing people, but I noticed the little things. Like this is beyond deck. This is just like how I get my ideas. I was just looking at the angle of how they hold their phones and the orientations of what. And then more, if I could, I'll see what they're doing in general because I'm so far away. I noticed that there are a good amount of people who read books on their phones. I found out a lot of people play Candy Crush, and there is a huge amount of people who do jack shit. Apologies for the language. So they, I've seen so many people where they're just holding their phone and they're just scrolling through the home back, through the home back, scroll right side to left. And then I realized they're starved for like internet because we're through the tube. There's no internet. I check my phone. There's like no bars. They're just aimlessly doing. The second the internet comes, they're on TikTok. They're on Reels. They're scrolling. They're scrolling. So I realized that people really don't know what to do in that point. So the idea is there. Like you just ask a question. How do you account for internet not being there? So you have a multitude of solutions, but we learned in design thinking that don't actually come up with a solution, like really find the stakeholders, find who is there. But the general sense is you found a problem, like you found a genuine problem. Now you can build on that, and that's the way to do it. So there's not many ways you could do it, but it's just an example of what I use.
Fair enough. Um, that's a good point. I mean, you're right. You being attentive to those signals. I guess a way to flip that question, there are obviously signals that also are not good, and I feel like you're exposed to those signals a lot more in environments where kind of wanting to build a startup or entrepreneurship is a status quo feeling. You're pushed in that direction, so everybody wants to do something. So you're more inclined to just take an idea and go build something around it. How should you avoid that? Like, what's the good way to kind of take a step back and be like, you know what? I feel like I'm being kind of hyped up about this, but maybe not the right idea. Maybe not the way to go about it.
Well, you got to get people to disagree with you, and the way to do is to speak to the people you feel most uncomfortable with. Like find some people who you kind of hate. Like find people that would absolutely give you their unbridled truth. Like if you keep going to your friends and getting their yeses saying, "Oh, absolutely, it's a great idea," it's good for your ego. It's great for just feeling happy, but it's not getting you anywhere. Maybe your friends do tell you genuinely that it's a bad idea, in which case it's really a bad idea. Because even if your friends are telling you, it's probably a bad idea. I should
Yeah.
probably listen to that sometimes. So, but I would say get people who are totally random, like people who you absolutely don't know. Just get that going because when you build your team, you find your co-founder. The first thing I would do is speak to a random person and say, "This is the idea we're already building on." Like I wouldn't say we're incepting it. Like we're not like just thinking about it. Like we already built this. Would you use it? And I feel that that is the best way to go about it because in the initial days of building Deck, I went to random drunk people in bars and they asked me the correct questions. They were like, why wouldn't I use Google Maps? And they were so honest because they were drunk. They didn't know me. And probably they wanted to punch me in the face for ruining their night. So get that validation if from people who just don't know you. Like that removes bias to a good amount. And no matter how good you are at speaking, because that plays a huge part how you sell um, that removes a lot of things of it. So like you're not getting like statements that are just made to make you feel better.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I guess on more on the founder side, leaving the ideas and startups aside for a bit and focusing more on the founder side is one of the most important decisions you can make who you pair up with. They say it's akin to a marriage. It's a long term. It's You're gonna have a stable, good relationship. There's gonna be ups and downs because it's a very intense environment, intense dynamic. But obviously, it needs to be healthy and stable enough to sustain you through long journey of being a founder. Um, what do you think? How one should approach finding a co-founder, and what makes a good pairing? Like in terms of complementaries, in terms of chemistry. And I guess the follow-ups to that question, maybe I should just ask it here: how is AI changing that co-founder dynamic too?
Right. So let me start from the top. I'd say so finding a co-founder, yes, it's like dating. It's actually like it's harder than dating and harder than marriage because the incentive you're getting is not with each other, but it's in a product. It's something you've birthed out of you. So I would say finding the having done this for so many years, I think the best way to find a co-founder is to find someone who's completely new and who's not your friend in advance. That gets real messy.
It's very interesting.
So a lot of people are like, "Oh, I'm going to start a company with my friend." It works sometimes. It really does if you can really separate the business from the personal. But more often than not, like I'm saying this from experience. My consultancy when I started when I was young, I did it with my best friend. We did it for about 10 years, and when I came to London, it just imploded. We were living in the same place, and it was done through a multitude of factors. And see, that didn't affect just the business, but my personal relationship with him. So that was very, very hard to get over. So the ideal co-founder pairing is you're in people who just have your shared interests and you can work well with. And like you kind of know that it's an intuition that you're able to bounce ideas off. You're able to be working in your own space and let them work in their own space and only come together when it's absolutely needed. It's a symphony that's you got to see it to believe it. You got to like work with many people. It's like speed dating. You got to like really look at what you want. Maybe you want something now, maybe you want something later. It's very circumstantial depending on the idea, depending on the time. But once you find your co-founder, you got to be in it for the long run. Like I think quitting is the worst. You want like people who don't quit. People who have some stake in the game. That's very important. Because a person who's like has a lot of money or like has a lot of resources to do another idea, it's not going to give you 100%. So if if you want someone who's going to do it 100%, they need to have some form of stake in the game. Like if this doesn't work out, my plan B is going to is they will have a plan B. is gonna have to be much worse than
Uh,
their situation right now before
yeah.
starting this or like after starting this. So that would be how to find it. And like no, sorry, that's like yeah, the attributes you're looking for. Where is a big question. I met my co-founder at a party I was DJing at, so it's
Yeah.
the most random places.
Yeah. I
So
actually very, I wanted to touch upon that because we were in a way privileged enough to be in a position, in a place where you were exposed to people who had a similar kind of ideas and mentality. Um, s- so I know you said it's hard to say where, but like if you could give few examples of what are the good kind of ways to put yourself in positions to be exposed to those people.
So, firstly, join a lot of communities. I personally, when I came to London, I tried to really do a lot of hackathons because it's one to one with like my people, like coders, people want to build, and I also tried joining communities that just like champion startups, like maybe just pitch events, maybe it's pizza nights, maybe it's like the launch of a new IDE. Um, I love going to those events. Like it's just the most like fun, wacky people you ever meet, and that's a good way to start. Join a lot of competitions if you can. Like competition definitely incentivizes like ideas to start flowing. I would say, going out to a bar or club is probably not the best way you want to meet a co-founder, but it's possible. So just keep going out. That's one. I would also say, like, apart from all this, the perfect co-founder is probably already sitting in your contact book.
Mm,
It's someone you could just call up, someone who you might have floated the idea of starting something, but you might want to give that person a call. Worth a shot. Like the worst they're gonna say is no. But also like have some options. Like I would say I think this is where it was gonna go, but even though I met my co-founder at a DJ party, at that time I think you know this, it's I had like a lot more startups in the works. I was running
yeah.
4 or 5 at the same time.
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
had
yeah.
multiple co-founders. And because I had the bandwidth to do it, I just ran it. And the whole goal was whichever one is the most successful, I go join that full time. So it was like from 5, then to 3, then to 2, and then 1. And then this gave me a lot of options. Maybe not everyone has this bandwidth, which is why the initial selection is very, very important. But try it out. Like just keep trialing, go out as much. Like, and that's all you need to do.
You heard it here first, folks. You gotta go to parties and you gotta slide in DMs. Um, the second question, as part of it, was how AI is changing that co-founder dynamic. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I would say now the idea of like one man companies is a real thing. I would say that I, as one person, could indeed start. In fact, just to add some knowledge into this, there's this new thing called paperclip, um, which is for zero human orchestration of like AI only companies. Like, so you just like it hires people by itself. You just give it a goal and it does it. Like, so it's crazy. Things are going really fast to the point where there's even no humans required to run a company. So it's just one person who just tells, make this company, and it's just going to make it. It's going to hire its engineers, going to hire the marketer, it's going to do everything. Just give it enough credits, and it just adjust, just like running ads. You're just setting a budget and saying within this budget, make me this company and make it like generate X amount of money, make no mistakes, and that's what's happening. So I would say the value of having more people in a team is dwindling day by day, which I think 2 is the best, like, number you're looking at because you have one person handling the business angle, one person handling the product angle. I think that's the only 2 fields left. Of course, if you're doing something a little more, advanced, like maybe something more tough, like let's say you're actually building models or you're doing something in defense or you're doing something
Tech, biotech, yeah.
yeah, I think then you would probably know what you need. You need more people to actually do research or like actually implement or like handle many of the operations that cannot be safely handed to AI. But for the average SaaS, I think today I I don't even think you should be looking at a co-founder. I think you should start by building that product up to 80% and only getting a co-founder when you absolutely need someone to help you with XY aspect.
I know. We danced around it so many times, but we never actually mentioned the startup you're building properly and the problem you're going after. So, what is it, and how do you guys come up with it?
Well, the startup we're building is called SwipeOnDeck. It's a platform that helps you find the best experiences around the city. Think Tinder, but for experiences. So we're building this for the city of London to start with, and we wanted to build this for all the planners. It's not for everyone, it's for the planners in your group. It's all those hours spent to find the perfect spot, like coordinating with the group chat and then actually going out. We want people, our ultimate mission is to get people to go out. Like i- our entire thesis is IRL, and I think that's the basis of what we're doing. So whatever we can do to make your planning easier and to get that decision made faster, reducing that decision fatigue, no more effort, no more time, so much time taken, and you won't have any more confusion. So it should really help you in that way, and that's our mission right
Consumer space is a very interesting space. It's a very fun space, you know,
here.
um, but it also comes with quite a few difficulties and challenges, right? One, what made you go after consumer, startup consumer space? And two, what are some of the bigger challenges you've been facing and you believe are in this space?
So the reason why we went to consumer is that we wanted to actually solve a problem for people, not for businesses. We didn't want to like switch to B2B just because, okay, that's where the money is. We will eventually go to B2B, but for actually making revenue. But the underlying aspect, as mentioned earlier, is to solve a problem for ourselves as the planners of our groups and also solve a problem for like other planners. So we that's why we chose B2C, not particularly because of a market, just because the that's what we were building was like, until like, attached towards. So in for consumer in general, like I would say it is a super hard field, like it's a super hard segment to be in, particularly because of the volume that you require, the amount of capital that you need to bleed in marketing to get this to really shine in a field full of competitors that actually have more purchasing power than you. So we're even though we say our direct competitors are like Fever, Dice, Design My Night, we're also pretty big. Like some of these are like multi-million like dollar companies. Like I think all of them are. We're also competing against Google Maps, which is by Google. Every single person uses Google Maps. In fact, what we noticed was when people have that question, hey, I want to go out tonight, they actually open Google Maps. They don't even open their like browser because they're outside already or they want to know how to get there. So what you see is that you also have a lot of competitors in this space where it's super easy because it's a very human problem. It's not a very niche problem, and you're also addressing a very wide audience. This app is not meant for a person who has specific domain knowledge. This should be used by a kid who can like find a place to find ice cream. So making it easy to use, that's another thing. Like making it super simple is another thing. You got to cater to a wide audience. Love to call them goldfish from time to time because it's frustrating because their attention spans are much less. You're not looking at people who you expect to be at a caliber. We can't like expect that out of them because it's not fair. So I would say that would be the biggest problem in consumer, but it's also very rewarding. And the space is getting quite hot right now because, in fact, the most recent investment made into a company like this was Rodeo. By it was co-founded by the ex-CEO of Hinge.
Mm.
It's got $8.5 million, and in that Forbes article, he wrote, "I don't know how to make revenue, but he got 8.5 million." And the space is increasing. Even Luma is considered, and we use Luma all the time
Yeah.
back in uni. We have Partyful, we have Dice, who all the boiler room events, they have features like this as well. So I would say it's an exciting space, but because of the capital that's required, the amount of reach that's required, it's a very, very hard space to be in.
Consumer, I like consumer. I mean, it's so fun, and I know it's a bit of a scary place for VCs, and we're gonna talk about VC
Mhm.
funding. I mean, in a way, access to revenue is a bit fast, and what I mean by is that, if somebody likes the product enough to pay, they can just subscribe, and you instantly have money. But eh, first of all, it's not the same size as enterprise deals. It's not the same, sure, enterprise sales cycle can take a while, but when you get all the money, you get it for a while, and the churn is not as much as you would see in a consumer space. So you're right, like you do require quite a bit of capital to bleed into it to get it to a level before you can start actually generating um, revenue, which I guess brings me to another question about the VC funding. Like, how, what do you think of VC money? And what's your broader take? And at what point do you think founders should seriously start thinking about raising, especially perhaps in your space specifically? And how do they decide they need it right now and how much to raise the runway and all that?
So uh, I would say if there's any possibility that you don't need VC money, I think that would be the first option you would take. So I wouldn't um if there's any way to like generate revenue, like starting from like zero, I think every business should be like self-sustaining. Like because VC money comes in when you want to scale, you want to actually improve and you want to like get the word out there. And there's a clear-cut plan on like when you put in X amount of money, it will grow us to this much and our revenue goes this much and then we get profitable. But raising as a pre-revenue startup is dangerous. Like because you have no stream. Like there is no revenue coming in. Even if w- I would say like any startup that's making like a few $1,000 and you want to raise 1 million, got to really look at that math there. And while I'm saying this, I'm speaking about for us as well. Well, we're coming to how much to raise. That is a question that we're trying to figure out as well. Like, is 500K enough? Is 1 million enough? Is 2 million enough? In fact, nothing would be enough because it's how you allocate those funds to get to a stage which will provide a good multiple for the investor. But nothing is guaranteed. Like even for our initial round, which we raised friends and family, we told them like, okay, there's not going to be a guarantee of return on this, but if there is, this is how much you will make in the seed round, and then that's all. We didn't even like go to like Series A, exit, whatever. So there's a huge liability that you're taking up when you get any form of money. It's the same as getting a loan from a bank. Um, they are taking equity. They have more control. You don't get to make decisions as freely as before, and you have a constant timer on your head because obviously when you raise, you want to look at about 12 to 18 months of runway. That is the standard across the industry. So let's say you're raising 1 million and you say this is your burn rate, and if you're sure that your burn rate is going to increase like linearly, or like even if it's increasing exponentially, if you can graph that out, that's great. I think that is the best indication of, okay, this is how much money I need. You got to look at the data, you got to do the numbers repeatedly. But I feel that you also have to account to like for a lot of things that could go wrong. Like, okay, what if this campaign fails? What if this like thing fails? Do I need more people? So be super conservative with the with your own valuation. Ask for more, like ask for more than you're worth, and see what happens. Because if you ask exactly, if I were to go to a VC today and be like, hey, I want 200 grand for 12 months, they're going to laugh at me. They're like, what are you going to do with 200 grand for 12 months? I can obviously substantiate it by saying, hey, we actually don't need that much. But it certainly sounds a lot worse than me going and saying, hey, I want 2 mil. Because then they'll ask the question, why 2 mil? And then you could have the grand scheme of thing, like the grand plan saying, we want to be $1 billion company by 5 years. We do not know that for sure, but it's our then that's where the confidence and the way you pitch and like your ability to sell comes into play. Because at the end of the day, BCs are still people. Like if you have a good enough sales pitch, they're going to invest in you. I've seen some truly horrible products get invested. I've seen some truly great products
Yeah.
not get investment.
Yeah.
But the world always like comes to balance. So obviously the good ones always come through, but in a sad way, even the ones that are quite bad, they because they had a good sales pitch, they come out with a bit of fun. I would say slippery slope, so take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah. I think in America, that works quite well. The marketing and the sales, uh, lands a few millions before you even have anything out there.
I actually wanted to bring up as well, like thank you for bringing up the U.S. market because they invest a lot more money than the UK. The UK, the investors are really, really scared. Like they want to know everything, and they're not as not as willing to pull out their wallet for bigger checks. So getting a decent sized investment in the UK is a lot harder, and as you would have noticed.
If you had a chance, do you think you would want to build would you would move to US or would you still like to build here?
I would love to move to the US, but actually, for now, I would like to establish here in London because I wouldn't be the first one having the idea.
Mm,
In fact, most of the companies that got these like big checks are in the States.
mm,
Our direct competitor, Corner, has 3.7 million from Tiger Capital. So there's no way that a person who's based in London has a company registered in London is going to compete with someone who's been in the States all along. So might as well conquer this market and then head to the States with an established market here so that we have some defensibility moving it. But the US is definitely the end goal because that's where the money's at.
I think the technology lawyer I was talking, startup technology lawyer I was talking to, he was saying if you want to move to US as a startup, you either get in early, like really early and build from there, or you enter very late. You don't go in between because that's where you trying to build it here while also trying to find a product market fit there. You're just bleeding money versus if you build early there, you gain in markets, you can expand back into Europe later down the line. Or if you successfully establish yourself here and you have some organic interest arising out of America and whatnot, you can then expand to those regions. Um, but you're right. If you can make it in London, I mean, you can make it in other places too. Um, One thing very quickly is you mentioned about it's a bit of a complex calculus that arises from what you said, right? You said you need VC money. Don't get VC money unless you want to scale, right? Like VC money is for scale. Yeah, you're right. Um, and scale usually happens once you find the product market fit. You can scale once you know there's a certain degree of PMF. And a cleared PMF arises usually around the Series A funding. But until Series A, you need few millions before you can get to, or, back then it was 500K, 250K, whatever. But now it's like you need a couple of millions to get to the Series A stage. Um, so like in your head, like how do you think of that? Okay, you said try to avoid VC funding as much as long as possible until you actually want to scale. But obviously, to get to certain product market fit, you need a degree of funding too. So, like, how do you think of that dynamic of that calculus?
Well, it's a tough one because a lot of people would say, "Hey, I do need that money. Like, I need it for hiring so and so that my product can be better. I need it for doing some compliance things. I need it for developing a, a bunch of new things." There's always going to be a reason that you would want the money for, but obviously it's for a promise, right? So you are taking on a liability when you take any form of investment, whether it be from your own parents, it could be from like a friend. Maybe it's not as pronounced because you can probably talk to them and like say, but I would say if I were to get like let's say a check from like a big VC, they will have some form of expectation. So maybe they can eat those losses, and maybe if things do go wrong, hope it doesn't, they can eat those losses. But then for future startups, that's going to affect your image because you'll be like, hey, you raised X amount of money and you have nothing to show for it. So my reasoning for why generate revenue early is because you have at least some form of money flowing through the company or like some form of verified way that I can make some money out of this. Because that's the end of any business. Like you have to generate revenue. You got to sustain the business over a long time. So even if it's like a small amount and you just need to show that something's coming in, and then the calculus becomes super easy because you want to make this machine that when you feed in money it becomes bigger or it goes faster. So that's what every company is, right? If you have an inflow of capital, you suddenly see more innovations coming out of it. Maybe they're able to sustain operations for longer, and it doesn't necessarily have to be profitable. It's just that cash has to be flowing in. So this is classic for Uber, is classic
Yeah.
for um, Silicon Valley startups that have never, like Amazon, never turned a profit. So maybe they have a few quarters that they've gone green, but for the most part, they've always been on red. But they've always had cash inflow. Same for OpenAI. They're like, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, 13 billion in a loss.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. But they just got 113 billion
Yeah.
in funding.
Yeah.
Now, if you were looking at it classically, people will be like, why are you investing in a company that is clearly not making money? But that's because they're providing an essential service. They have good trajectory to actually achieve what they're setting out to achieve. And that's all it matters because no one can stand the fact that, this company does not exist tomorrow. When you make yourself that undeniable, then there's no chance you're not getting money. So it trickles down to the lower stage as well, where you gotta project to investors that without your product, like the world will not be a better place. So that's that's what we're fighting against in
Yeah.
that.
I mean, VCs invest in a future potential, right? Like the same thing with Uber. They don't invest in what's happening right now. They invest in what will happen once it gets to a certain point. Uber was definitely a bit of an interesting case, and I'm forgetting details, but I think it was, under different circumstances, it would be probably not this, wouldn't work out or would be different. But because there's a lot of money being kind of put in Uber for a very long time before. Um, you're right, and I think in consumer space, as you mentioned, it's much harder because the churn, the retention is a big issue. I mean, even if you look at Duolingo, I think only 10% of Duolingo's users are actually paying uh, customers, right? And there are a couple other startups that I'm blanking out. I can't remember. And then, in the consumer space, actually, you see this innovative ways of maintaining retention. Duolingo has its alls that comes and reminds you, and the funny stuff. And some other startups have developed their own ways to maintain retention. How do you think of retention? What's your perspective on that?
Well, I think retention is everything. Like it's the simple act of a person coming back. Like that's all it is. Maybe you could have in like some extra steps to it, like okay, they have to do this action, they have to like maybe finish this sequence. But in the end, it's just them coming back. That means they actually want by their own like voluntarily they're just coming back to whatever you built. So I would say the gold standard for like retention is over 20%. So if you have a product that is having at scale over 20% retention, you have a $1 billion idea right there. So obviously there are some of the AI companies, of course, they have much higher retention, but you can see that falling even with OpenAI now because the now as competitor because when you have that good retention, you're gonna have competitors straight away because they're gonna be like, okay, that's the market. So 10, 20%, if you look at Duolingo as well, they are still doing well. Like there are so many people that use Duolingo because they capture a wide audience and they need to get as many users as possible, which is the problem in consumer. It's the volume game. So if Duolingo had 1,000 users only, and say I have 10% retention, that just means they have 100 customers that are coming back. Out of that, you're having a small percentage who actually pay. So this is economies of scale. Like it doesn't work in in like 4 digits or even 5 digits. You're looking at millions of users using it, and then that percentage of a small percentage of those users are gonna drive a lot of your revenue, and that's where you look at B2B to like get more revenue coming in through like some means. So for us as well, right now is just getting as many users. So get as many users here, and then our way of doing it is to get as much data about what people like and dislike, and then get the top rated ones, then go to the supplier, which are these restaurants, bars, like experiences, and say, hey, we have like a bunch of people in our app that are liking your thing. So, hey, can we partner up? And then it works the other way too, because now they are giving some discounts and they get more people to come there, and then that whole flywheel starts. So at a certain scale, it doesn't involve any input from us because people are going to find places by themselves. Then the experiences will have enough incentive to advertise on our platform, and so it starts going up. But there's a critical mass for that. We need at least 10,000 users to even get like a bit of results from that. So I would say that is probably the biggest challenge in retention, but it is the only metric. That's the only metric that matters in consumer apps.
Yeah, I think the healthy sign of a good consumer startup is how much the retention itself. And, there are quite a few successes. I mean, Flow Health is a women's health tech startup. I think not long ago, they raised 200 million um, from General Atlantic or somewhere. And, I mean, obviously it's a very big market, like half of the world's population. It's also something they found a gap in the market that is very much necessary to fill. There's a need for it, and people keep coming back because it's not, because it's something that by the nature brings people back, right? But things like Duolingo, they've managed to create, by this retention techniques, a certain habit building, and I think building a habit is one of the ways to maintain that retention, right? And obviously you look at hardware consumer startups like Whoop and all the other stuff. There's obviously a bit of a cult following around it, right? And the
A little bit.
health, yeah, look, the tech pros and the health pros and all this. There's a certain habit building and there's a certain cult following, and it doesn't just become a thing you do it once. It becomes something you come back to every day. Whether you're measuring your the vital charts and just looking at your stats and all that. And the same thing with some other apps where there's a certain habit building happening. How do you think of like in your particular startup, like that building that habit, keep bringing people back? Like what's your kind of thinking in that space?
Well, the underlying aspect is to get people to go out. And that's a thing that's very human, that we crave social connection. And it's a habit that we follow subconsciously. So obviously, if a person isolates themselves for too long, they go insane.
Yeah.
So you and anyone ends up meeting other people. If it's your family, it's your friends, it's your girlfriend, it doesn't matter how you do it. You just do it subconsciously. We're trying to solve for those situations where you want to plan to go out. Like you have like a big thing that you want to do, or you just want to casually find the best spots. I mean, maybe you want to save some money, but there's a lot of people who are not doing that right now because we're entering, I think, the loneliest time in human history. So that's something we had to look up, but that's actually real because a lot of people are now being stuck at home. They're like not having time to go out. And like the habit we really want to build is get out, leave your phone. Um, in all aspects, our app should only work for you for like 5 minutes or less. If it works for 30 seconds and you get your decision, amazing. It should reduce that decision. You should not be swiping on our app for like ages. That's not the point here. I think in from a business point of view, that's terrible. But I would say from an operational point of view and a functional point of view, that's total success.
Fair enough.
Because it's like saying when the habit you want to build, it should be like healthy one. So that's where it comes from. So when you're building these habits, it's a little different considering it's something that you do in real life. You have to walk out of your house, you have to prepare yourself, dress up, go out, interact with some humans, and come back. So having those experiences, that's the real habit we're building, and we have to influence it from if pixels on a screen to a real life experience.
That's that's really cool. I mean, maybe one of the features could be finding people who want to check out one place together, and then you can just click them and go to that place randomly together.
Well,
Um,
I'll give you something we're working on. Not really told anyone this yet, but so it's a way to. Have you ever? I'm going to ask you a question. Have you ever heard of the just like the general concept of promises?
yeah.
The general thing. So when you go out with a friend or maybe you're speaking to someone, have you ever heard the statement, "Hey, let's hang out sometime"?
Oh, am I guilty of that, man? I'm
Yeah,
I'm so guilty of that.
bu-
Yeah.
but you never actually set a date on when you do it. Maybe a really like a person who has their calendar on point, they would probably put it there. But even then, there's no guarantee. But in a way, when you say that and the other person says yes, it's like an unenforceable contract. So what we're building is a way to just tap when you're in close proximity, when you both have the app, of course. And there are some privacy supporting ways on how to track that location of the user over time. So Apple already does this on your phone right now. We're just going to piggyback on it. So it finds, it learns from you on when you are at a workplace, like in a work region. This is all publicly available data on what residential zones are and what's work zone. And then after a certain amount of time, if it's on a weekend or some time where you're both free, when you're close together, it sends you a message saying, "Hey, I think you should meet that person. Here's a spot that you can meet, and we'll give you a discount if you go meet this person right now."
Hmm.
You have this at scale. You have it for multiple people. Let's say like 5 of your friends just happen to be in the same 1 kilometer radius. You could just have a boys' night out or a girls' night out. And that would be so instantaneous. I think that's something that we don't think about. So we need a system to do the thinking for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's one of the features we are working on. Super difficult, requires a lot of data, but I feel that's something I would use. One click, forget it, system works for you.
That I think that'd be perfect if I could, see, and also if you could just like update your status, available, not available, and boom, if you're near, boom, you choose a place and go. Well, folks, you share exclusively for the first time about the new features that's about to drop. Thank you for letting me and others know about it, Ash. Uh,
For sure.
this episode has been so fun, and we've talked for
100%.
an hour now, and we are coming towards the end of the episode. So I have a couple more questions. I guess one thing I really wanted to ask, and I kind of forgot about it along the way, was when you said, pitching and selling your idea is very important, especially to VCs. And there are many things they look at, right? Like they look at the teams, they look at the storytelling, they look at traction and whatnot. In your opinion, and you've pitched quite a bit, I've seen a couple of them myself. What are the most important things that usually people like really like makes them stand up from their seat or like pay more attention?
Well, you gotta have a hook, uh, and you gotta like have a problem that is well known. So, okay, if you're probably uh, catering to a specific audience, still like get that problem out there. But they're looking. I think when you're pitching to investors, not regular people, they're looking at the founders more than anything. They don't really care as much for the product. Rather, they care about who's implementing it. How open are you to pivot? Is a question I keep getting asked. Like, if this is not your fit, what would you do next? Will you be able to like adapt to the market? But if you're just pitching to a class of just like some regular people, you gotta really read the room, like understand what who they are. I think I picked that up personally from DJing, where I have to understand
The
whether they're
vibe of the
song
room.
or not.
Yeah.
So you adapt it as you go. Like, so if I totally prepared for a presentation, even to ABC, or like I prepared it for like the class, I have to be ready to adapt. Like, who am I selling it to and what am I selling? Maybe if I find out in the class there's a few investors, like I find out beforehand, maybe I'm going to sell myself more, saying I have so and so and I'm the best person that can do this. If it's just a class and they are potential users, I'm going to be talking about the product. They don't care who I am. They just
Mm.
care that that product is going to help them. So it very much depends on the audience. I think know your audience is very, very important because you could probably be in a weird position if you're pitching the product to an investor and that product is like, well, let's say ours, and they don't know anything about the founder because they're gonna ask like, okay, great product, would use it, but oh, why are you building it? Why are you the best team to do this?
Who are you? You know?
Yeah, who are you? They're gonna ask that Kevin O'Leary question, like, what's stopping me from just like taking this right now and building it myself? That's a very valid question. Like I think after like several rounds of like just like eating that up, I would say I finally understand it. They're not trying to look for they're not it's not about the product, it's about the founders. That's
Yeah.
all it is.
So essentially, if I could summarize the entire thing, you said that the message remains more or less the same. It's just how you, the angle you take, the way you approach it, this, the storytelling, the way you adjust it to the audience, it changes based on, what they might like. And it very much depends on your intuition to read the room and read the vibe. My final question to you, Ash, and we've talked a lot, and I think it's going to tie it together quite well. And I always like to finish my episodes with more reflection based questions because we talk a lot about startups and VC, but at the end of the day, we're two friends talking, and part of it is just talking about life. You have an interesting background, different countries, different fields of study, different experiences. Um, how did all of that shape the version of Ashwin we are seeing today? And what were the defining moments for you personally?
Well, it's shaped me quite a bit, but I'm glad it hasn't changed me as much. I feel that it's changing a lot of uh, cities and countries over my life has really put in kind of a survival mode in me to kind of be happy with what you have and to adapt and to find out like opportunities out of every situation. It also incentivized like collaboration, understanding of other cultures, and just be the happiest person to be around. Because I think the one thing I've noticed across the world is that there's a lot of sadness. There's a lot of like people who take life way too seriously, and while doing that, they lose that meaning. They just become robots. So I've always found it better to put on a smile, ask for cookies, whatever makes it cool, like, and maintain that over to other people. Like, respect everyone, and of course, like, find a way to help. Like, I think later in my life, I've changed that help into opportunities, potential, but it always comes from a need to help. Like, if I hear about a problem, I'm not going to stop thinking about a solution for it. I think you would have noticed that every time someone has a problem, I always try being like, hey, maybe you can try this. Maybe they'll probably say no, or they'll probably say, okay, I'll try that. But I want to say that answer. So this comes into the coding aspect as well. This comes into like founding startups. Um, and I think all of that put together is what you get right now. Like, you get someone who's just happy doing what he's doing, not really that money minded. I just love to build cool stuff. Like, and I hope that even in the future, regardless of what happens, I still will be that person, smile on the face, call whenever, and be a good human being. Like, I want to be known for not not just great things that I do, but for the person I am. So that I think that in the end, just to summarize, translates into a more efficient engineer, a better designer, and like better business person. Like, that's all.
Fair enough. Ash, it's been a really cool and fun episode. And I there were moments I completely forgot that we were doing podcasts, and I felt like we are just grabbing coffee in one of those coffee shops. Thank you for such a cool episode, and I cannot wait to hear more good stories coming from your way. And appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It was amazing.
Glad. Have a good one, my guy. Yeah.